Thomas Kiander, Lieutenant. Well, there was always going to be some form, because we were quite young, of I guess the best term would be not resentment, but maybe that was the fact. And there was one sailor who was making it pretty vocal among the others that he really didn't care about me or for me, and that he was actually, in fact, if he got a chance, he was going to kill me. It was a pretty heady stuff, and but it was something that I, couldn't understand but before me there had been other officers aboard who had been careless and fraternized with him, and I wouldn't do that, and I didn't do that. When I went ashore, I went to either officers' club or with other officers or whatever, and some of them felt that was something they couldn't deal with, and so I had a particularly ugly, difficult, awkward situation that occurred where one sailor had made some comments, and he claimed that I disrespected a sailor and his family when I went to a funeral. And so finally it got really heavy duty and ugly, and the commanding officer called me up. He said, Mr. Kiander, got a problem here with morale in the department down there, and there's a sailor by such and such a name. And he said to me, he says, I've got to make some choices and decisions here. He says, I can put you ashore, I could put the sailor ashore, or both of you. So he said, I'm in a quandary, I don't know what to do. He explained everything to me, and I simply, the pressure and everything was so overwhelming, I put my hands in my face and I wept. The commanding officer, he'd asked me, and I says, that's just not true, sir. This is not what it's about. So excuse me, he called the sailor and he says, the reason you threatened Mr. Kiander's life, is that because of a comment he made? The commanding officer looked down at him and he says, no, sir, it isn't. He says, okay, he says, you're going to leave here. If I ever see you back here again, I'm going to throw the book at you. And he called me back in. He says, Mr. Kiander will never question the word of an officer again. And from that time on, I had no further issues. But it was a pretty unusual, traumatic for a young guy, 22 or 23. And so that was quite a learning experience. And grew up in a real hurry. And there was one incident where I grew up in a real hurry. So, but the commanding officer thought very, very highly of me, and both him and he followed him. I really had excellent, incredible service time with him and wonderful fitness reports. But it was just being a human, and I cared for the men, I cared for how they were treated, and they say the exception proves the rule. Because the men would, I felt, had respect for me, a lot of respect. And I took care of them, and they took care of us. And I eventually shifted up to the deck division, and I had upwards of 30 men under my command, and so that's a pretty good responsibility for a young man who's 23 by that time, or 24. So it was a pretty important experience. Captain Hartley was my first captain. He was the one who was in there when he told me he'd never question a word of an officer again. And my second commanding officer was Captain Perkins, and he was another one. I was very outgoing, and he really took to that. It's just my personality, a sales type and an excited, emotional person. He says, I never met a quiet officer that amounted to anything. And slowly, one by one, these guys that were just shuffling along and barely doing their work, he would put them ashore. And so he'd hand me various responsibilities, of which he had me organize a party for the entire ship's company that was aboard when we went into a port. And he told me, Mr. Kiander, why don't you be my flag lieutenant? You go aboard, I know the mayor in this town. And he says, when we get in there, I want you to go in there and organize a party. And when you do, the gals, and these are nice gals, they'll come aboard the ship and they'll meet the sailors that are on duty section. It'll be a nice party. I said, that's fine. And that was just my cup of tea. Oh, he gave me good recommendations for that. So those are the things, and